Roman Reigns is back. And he didn't come alone. The bloodline as we knew it is dead. And WWE will never be the same again. Cut to chaos. Fans screaming. Signs shaking. Phones lighting up the arena. Reigns standing at the top of the ramp, hood up, eyes locked, flanked by a man fans never thought they'd see standing beside him. 17,000 fans packed into the building. You could feel the electricity before the first match even rang the bell. Everyone came in expecting fallout from Money in the Bank. Maybe even a surprise. No one, not even the smart fans online, guessed what they'd walk away having witnessed. On screen, Seth Rollins was strutting. Money in the Bank briefcase in hand. Arrogant. Celebrating. Gloating. He wasn't just relishing victory, he was rubbing it in. To the fans. To Roman Reigns. To everyone who doubted him. And then, boom. Lights out. Total silence. A beat. Then, Sierra. Hotel. India. Echo. Lima. Delta. You know the rest. The crowd detonated. 17,000 people screamed so loud you could barely hear the music drop. Roman Reigns emerged from the shadows. This wasn't the calm, composed chief from months ago. This was something else. He walked slow. Controlled. No pyro. No entourage. Just him. Hoodie over his head. A mic in his hand. Eyes locked dead on Rollins. He stepped into the ring and didn't waste time. I've been gone too long. But I'm back, to take what's mine. The fans came unhinged. Roman. Roman, chants shook the arena. And before anyone could even process it, Jacob Fatu's music hit. If you don't know Jacob Fatu yet, you will. Built like a freight train. Moves like a cruiserweight. Eyes like fire. He walked out, calm. Confident. Deadly. And he walked straight to Roman's side. No hesitation. No split glance. No games. He took the mic, looked right at the camera, and said, "Solo's done. I'm with the real chief now." Boom. Just like that, allegiances shifted. A super kick. A spear. The ring was a war zone. Solo's crew? Wiped out in under 2 minutes. Fatu and Reigns stood tall. And WWE had just flipped the switch on a storyline years in the making. This wasn't a simple comeback. This wasn't a classic heel turns on heel moment. Reigns returning was inevitable. But coming back with Jacob Fatu? That was the kill shot. Because you don't just get up from betrayal. You don't just lose control of your family and walk back like nothing happened. You need a message. You need vengeance. You need force. Jacob Fatu was that force. And the betrayal? The betrayal that sparked this whole thing? It happened just days earlier, at Money in the Bank 2025. Let's rewind. At Money in the Bank, Solo Sikoa stood inches from glory. The men's ladder match was pure chaos, Rollins, LA Knight, Andrade, all throwing bodies like grenades. But Solo had it won. He was standing tall. Bruised. Bleeding. Ready to grab the briefcase. Behind him, Jacob Fatu climbed the other side of the ladder. The audience thought they were about to see Solo win it all, with his most trusted ally watching his back. But then it happened. Fatu grabbed Solo's leg. Yanked him off. Looked him dead in the eyes. And said the words no one expected, "I hate you." Then? Super kick. Moonsault. Through a ladder. Solo was wrecked. Seth Rollins grabbed the briefcase and walked out the back door like a thief. And the crowd? Lost. Their minds. In one brutal minute, Fatu made his move. And WWE launched a new chapter. Let's be clear, This story didn't start at Money in the Bank. It didn't even start at WrestleMania 41. This story is 5 years deep. And it's about more than titles. More than legacy. It's about family. Power. Control. And the fall of a man who called himself the Tribal Chief. Roman Reigns disappeared after WrestleMania. Solo stepped in. Fatu was brought in as backup. But behind the scenes? Loyalty was crumbling. The cracks were small at first. Solo barking orders, Fatu getting sidelined, JC Mateo doing all the talking. But fans saw it. They chanted OTC, Original Tribal Chief, week after week. They begged for Roman to come back. They knew Solo didn't have it. And WWE? They played the long game. They let the tension build. They made you wait. And then, boom. They lit the match. Roman didn't just come back. He came back with blood. With fire. With Jacob Fatu at his side and vengeance on his mind. And now? Everything has changed. Solo Sikoa is exposed. Seth Rollins is in the crosshairs. The Bloodline is under new management. So if you're here for jaw-dropping twists, if you're here for power plays, betrayals, and legacy wars, you're in the right place. Because in this video, we're breaking it all down, what led to Fatu's shocking betrayal, why Roman chose this moment to strike, what this means for Solo, Rollins, and the entire WWE, and how this could explode at SummerSlam, or even WrestleMania 42. So buckle up. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. And let's dive into the moment that shook wrestling to its core. This is Wrestling Juice. And today, we're telling the story the way it deserves to be told. Friday Night SmackDown, June 13, 2025. Los Angeles, California. Kia Forum. It was supposed to be just another post-pay-per-view show. A Fallout episode. A little bit of tension, a couple of rematches, maybe a promo or two to set up SummerSlam. Nothing too out of the ordinary. That assumption didn't last long. By the end of the night, the WWE Universe had been flipped inside out. Fans were screaming. Wrestlers backstage were watching on monitors, frozen. Social media exploded within seconds, and major sports outlets ran with the headline before the final segment even faded to black. Roman Reigns is back. And he didn't come alone. What happened on SmackDown wasn't just a surprise return. It was the kind of moment that shifts the course of an entire company. A moment that reshuffles locker rooms, rewrites championship storylines, and reignites rivalries long thought settled. This was WWE at its best, carefully layered storytelling detonated in one masterstroke. Let's break it down, minute by minute, as it happened. SmackDown was already riding the high of Money in the Bank. Seth Rollins, now holding the men's briefcase, kicked off the final segment. He walked down the ramp grinning like a man who had just pulled off the heist of the year. Fans booed, but he soaked it in. That's Rollins. He thrives on chaos, and he thrives even more when he's the one causing it. In the ring, he cut a promo that blurred the line between gloating and threatening. He called himself the true main event. He told the crowd Roman was gone and wasn't coming back. He laughed about how Paul Heyman chose him over the Bloodline. Then he dared anyone, Reigns included, to try and stop him from cashing in and taking over. That's when it happened. The arena lights went black. Total silence. Not even commentary dared to speak. Then, a static buzz crackled through the speakers. And a voice. Sierra. Hotel. India. Echo. Lima. Delta. You could feel it in your bones. This wasn't just nostalgia. This wasn't a tribute. It was a declaration. The Shield's music hit, and the place went nuclear. Roman Reigns appeared at the top of the ramp, wearing a black hoodie, face low, moving like a man who wasn't interested in making a statement. He was there to deliver one. He walked to the ring without his usual swagger. No elaborate entrance. No oosos. No pyro. Just a cold, calculated stare locked on Seth Rollins. The kind of stare that says, "You didn't win. You just delayed the inevitable." In the ring, Rollins froze. The smirk vanished. His body shifted, just slightly, as if bracing for a fight. Reigns stepped between the ropes, pulled the mic to his lips, and spoke 4 words that shook the building. "I've been gone too long." A pause. "But I'm back to take what's mine." Fans erupted. Roman chants roared through the Kia Forum. Phones shot into the air. Everyone knew this wasn't a cameo. This was a hostile takeover. And then, before the dust could even settle, a new sound hit the arena. Jacob Fatu's entrance. Now the energy changed. It wasn't just surprise anymore. It was confusion, then shock, then realization. Fatu, Solo's right hand. The wrecking ball of the bloodline. The man who just 2 weeks ago stood beside Solo as they brutalized Andrade and LA Knight, was walking out beside Roman Reigns. Not behind him. Beside him. Jacob Fatu walked to the ring like he owned it. Like this had been the plan all along. And maybe it had. Rollins didn't move. Roman didn't even look surprised. Fatu stepped into the ring, grabbed a mic, and delivered a line that instantly became legend. "Solo's done. I'm with the real chief now." The line hit like a slap to the face. Fans gasped. Commentators tried to catch up. Graves muttered something about betrayal, but even he didn't sound convinced it was real. It was real. The ambush was surgical. Solo's allies tried to intervene. JC Mateo sprinted down the ramp, followed by 2 Bloodline security guys, but they didn't stand a chance. Fatu threw Mateo over the ropes like a sack of laundry. Roman speared one of the security guards so hard his feet left the mat. The second got a super kick from Fatu that knocked him into next week. 2 minutes of violence. That's all it took. When the dust settled, Reigns and Fatu stood in the center of the ring. Dominant. Unbothered. Unchallenged. SmackDown didn't end with a stare down or a cliffhanger. It ended with a warning. The bloodline has changed. The new era isn't coming. It's already here. This wasn't just the return of a top star. This was the re-emergence of a mythic figure in WWE. Roman Reigns isn't just a wrestler. He's a movement. He's a symbol of power, control, legacy, and when aligned with someone as explosive and unpredictable as Jacob Fatu, he becomes something even more dangerous, a man with nothing to lose, and everything to reclaim. From a pure news perspective, this moment checks every box. It's timely, it's disruptive, it's controversial, and it has stakes that will ripple across every brand. Fans are already speculating, what does this mean for Solo? Will Reigns reclaim the undisputed title? What's the future of the bloodline now that allegiances have been reset? Most importantly, what happens when the man who lost everything returns with the one person capable of burning the entire system down? This moment will be replayed for years. It's already being dissected frame by frame on social media, and major outlets like ESPN, Bleacher Report, and Sports Illustrated have all pushed the story to the top of their feeds. Because moments like this don't come around often. This wasn't just a shocking return. This was a message. A warning. A war cry. Roman Reigns is back. Jacob Fatu has chosen his side. And the game has changed. June 13, 2025. Kia Forum. Los Angeles, California. The air was thick before the show even began. There was a different energy in the crowd that night. Everyone was expecting something. They just didn't know what. Something was about to snap. And when it did, it didn't just rattle the walls. It reshaped the entire direction of WWE. The final segment of the night began like a classic post-PPV gloatfest. Seth Rollins, briefcase in hand, strode out to the ring to a chorus of boos so loud it drowned out the music for a second. He wore a suit brighter than a supernova. Hair tied back. Gold chain swinging. That knowing smirk on his face like he had outsmarted the entire world. He soaked it in. The man had cashed in before. He had ended dreams before. But this time, he was different. He wasn't lurking. He wasn't waiting. He wanted the spotlight. He wanted everyone to remember that while chaos brewed inside the bloodline, he stood tall at Money in the Bank. He made the fans wait before he spoke. He paced the ring, holding the mic like a weapon. Then finally, "Did you miss me?" The crowd responded instantly, and not in his favor. The heat was deafening. But that was the point. He thrived on it. He fed off it. And with Roman Reigns absent since WrestleMania 41, Rollins felt unstoppable. He told the fans Roman was never coming back. He called Solo Sikoa a weak imitator. He called himself the real main event. The real tribal chief. Then he turned to the hard cam, smiled, and said the line that turned the entire building on edge: "If Roman wants this, he knows where to find me." Silence. And then, the lights shut off. No warning. No graphic. No flash. Just total darkness. The reaction wasn't panic. It was anticipation. Everyone in the building, everyone watching at home, instantly stopped breathing. Phones came up like a sea of fireflies. The commentary team went dead silent. Then, the sound. A soft burst of static, followed by 6 letters. Sierra. Hotel. India. Echo. Lima. Delta. The Shield. A tsunami of emotion surged through the crowd. The Shield theme hadn't played in years, not like this. Not with him. People jumped out of their seats. Grown adults screamed. Some fans dropped their phones trying to record it. Others just stood frozen. Then, emerging slowly through the smoke, Roman Reigns. No entrance gear. No gold gloves. No fireworks. Just a black hoodie. The hood pulled low. His walk was slow, deliberate. Methodical. He wasn't there to play to the crowd. He wasn't there to soak in the adoration. He walked like a man with a mission. Like someone coming to collect a debt. Rollins, in the ring, didn't move. Not at first. Roman circled the ring once. Never taking his eyes off Seth. He climbed the steps, entered through the ropes, and walked straight to the center. The music cut. The crowd didn't. He pulled the mic to his mouth. "I've been gone too long. But I'm back to take what's mine." That's all it took. One sentence. One moment. The place exploded. The Kia Forum wasn't just loud, it was shaking. People were climbing on chairs. Kids were crying. Men were hugging each other like a championship had just been won. The Roman Reigns era wasn't just back, it had restarted itself with fury. Rollins tried to answer. He raised his mic, but before a single word came out, another sound. New music. Hard. Violent. Unfamiliar to some, unmistakable to others. Jacob Fatu. The Samoan werewolf. The crowd didn't know how to react at first. Fatu had been Solo's right hand for months. The heavy. The brute force. The quiet destroyer. Why was he coming out now? Then came the visual. Fatu wasn't walking down with a scowl. He wasn't looking to interrupt a moment. He was walking straight toward Roman Reigns. And Roman didn't flinch. Fatu entered the ring, stood next to Reigns, and nodded. A simple nod. One that said, "I'm with you." It was one of those moments in wrestling where the silence said more than any promo could. The commentary team didn't speak for 10 seconds. And then Corey Graves whispered the words, "I don't believe it. Fatu has turned on Solo." The reaction rippled. Twitter exploded. Chants of "Holy S***** T" broke out in waves. Fatu took the mic. "Solo's done. I'm with the real chief now." At that point, it wasn't just a return. It was a coup. Seconds later, Solo's crew, JC Mateo and 2 hired enforcers, charged the ring. They didn't make it past the apron. Fatu launched himself over the top rope into a somersault dive that took out 2 men instantly. Roman sprinted forward, speared Mateo so hard it looked like he folded in half. Within 30 seconds, the ring was theirs. Roman stood over the fallen men. Fatu raised his arms. The crowd chanted, "Bloodline! Bloodline!" But this time, it wasn't in fear. It was in excitement. SmackDown's final visual was simple: Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu standing tall in the middle of the ring. No title belts. No backup. Just the original tribal chief and his new right hand, staring down the hard cam. The screen faded to black. No voiceover. No outro. Just the image burned into memory. This wasn't a faction reunion. This was a rebirth. The bloodline, as we knew it, had died in betrayal. But now, something more dangerous had risen in its place. For all the shock that happened on SmackDown, the fuse had already been lit days earlier, at Money in the Bank 2025. If SmackDown was the explosion, this was the spark. The betrayal at the center of it didn't just shift alliances, it cracked the very foundation of the bloodline and exposed the fractures that had been quietly growing for months. Las Vegas. T-Mobile Arena. July 6, 2025. The card was stacked. The men's Money in the Bank ladder match had the kind of lineup that only comes around once in a few years: Seth Rollins, LA Knight, Andrade, Solo Sikoa, Ricochet, and Bronson Reed. 6 hungry, violent, elite-level competitors willing to risk everything for the golden briefcase hanging above the ring. From the opening bell, chaos ruled. Tables broke. Bodies crashed. Ladders flew like weapons. But there was always a sense, building, inevitable, that it would come down to Solo. Solo Sikoa didn't just walk into this match as a participant. He walked in as the self-proclaimed tribal chief. Roman Reigns had disappeared after WrestleMania. Paul Heyman turned on him. The Usos were gone. Solo filled the vacuum with force and fear. He aligned himself with Jacob Fatu, brought in JC Mateo, and tried to stamp his own version of the bloodline onto WWE. But it always felt like a placeholder. Fans respected the violence, not the leadership. The moment Solo declared himself the new tribal chief, fans started chanting OTC, Original Tribal Chief. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't respectful. It was a warning. And on that night in Vegas, that warning came due. Halfway through the match, Andrade had just taken out Ricochet with a sunset bomb onto a ladder. Rollins lay outside the ring, clutching his ribs. Bronson Reed had just been powerbombed over the top rope. The ring was clear, except for 2 men. Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. The crowd rose. Solo began his slow climb toward the briefcase. Fatu stood at the base of the ladder, eyes scanning the carnage. It looked like he was watching Solo's back. That was the image WWE had presented for months. Fatu as the loyal enforcer. The hammer. The last line of defense. Then, it happened. Fatu placed one foot on the first rung of the ladder, then stopped. He looked up. Then he looked at Solo. Then, he grabbed Solo by the ankle and yanked him down. Confusion erupted in the crowd. Was this a mistake? Miscommunication? A mistimed spot? Solo turned, confused. Fatu didn't speak. He just stared. Then, slowly, he stepped closer, face to face with Solo. The arena leaned in, breathless. No music. No commentary. Just 2 men. And then Fatu spoke, His voice picked up on a boom mic near ringside. "I hate you." The crowd gasped. Solo barely had time to react before Fatu struck. Super kick. Right to the jaw. Solo staggered. Fatu wasn't done. He launched up the top rope in one motion and hit a moonsault that crushed Solo through a ladder bridge set up in the corner. Metal crunched. Solo's body folded. The audience screamed. The camera panned to Rollins, who saw the opportunity. He slid into the ring, scaled the ladder, and unhooked the briefcase without resistance. The bell rang. And Money in the Bank had its winner. But that wasn't what people were talking about. The moment wasn't Rollins' win, it was Fatu's betrayal. Replays aired from every angle. Solo's expression before the super kick. Fatu's quiet fury. The cold way he exited the ring and walked up the ramp without even looking back. And the crowd? They didn't know whether to cheer or boo. Some roared in approval, finally, Fatu breaking free. Others stood stunned, months of bloodline loyalty shattered in seconds. And online? Twitter caught fire. Jacob Fatu just burned the bloodline to the ground. What did we just witness? Solo trusted him. Fatu destroyed him. This is the story of the year. The betrayal didn't just come out of nowhere. In fact, WWE had been planting seeds for months. Go back to April, one episode of SmackDown caught a hot mic moment during a backstage segment. Solo, speaking to JC Mateo, unaware a camera was still rolling, said, "Fatu's just muscle. Not a thinker." It played off as casual background noise. But eagle-eyed fans clipped it, posted it, and started asking questions. Did Fatu hear it? Would it matter? Apparently, it did. Because from that point forward, the tension started to rise. Fatu's matches became more intense. He stared down Solo a little longer than usual. He stopped interfering in matches on cue. When Solo barked orders, Fatu didn't always respond. The signs were there. We just weren't reading them clearly. Until Money in the Bank. That betrayal didn't just signal the end of a partnership. It was a public message. Solo Sikoa was not the leader he claimed to be. And Jacob Fatu would no longer follow someone he didn't respect. Backstage reports began to leak. Sources said Fatu had pitched the turn weeks in advance. Some said Roman Reigns himself signed off on the angle. Others claimed it had been in the works since WrestleMania. Regardless of who planned it, the execution was perfect. It was sudden but believable. Shocking but earned. And it hit like a hammer. The fallout was instant. On the following Raw, Solo didn't appear. Fatu was missing too. No explanation was given. Just replays. Reactions. Speculation. Some fans thought maybe the betrayal was a red herring. Maybe this was all part of a larger bloodline mind game. But those doubts were erased on SmackDown when Jacob Fatu walked out beside Roman Reigns. That's when it clicked. Money in the Bank wasn't the betrayal. It was the declaration. And SmackDown? That was the beginning of the war. When Fatu turned on Solo, he didn't just flip a storyline. He blew up WWE's power structure. Everything that had been built in the wake of Roman's absence was now in flames. Fatu's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was strategic. He didn't want to destroy the bloodline. He wanted to cleanse it. And standing next to Roman Reigns days later, you could tell, this wasn't about the past anymore. This was about what comes next. The bloodline once stood as the most dominant faction in modern wrestling history. For nearly 3 years, they ran WWE with unshakable control. Roman Reigns sat at the top, holding the Universal Championship like a warlord guarding a throne. The Usos enforced the Empire's will. Paul Heyman orchestrated from the shadows. Solo Sikoa arrived later, silent, vicious, effective. And for a long time, it worked. But every dynasty falls. And this one started cracking long before the betrayal at Money in the Bank. Go back to WrestleMania 41. Roman Reigns walked into that event still holding the championship, but everything else around him was breaking. Jey Uso had left. Jimmy was injured. The Usos were no longer united. The Bloodline no longer walked out together, they limped. Reigns' opponent at WrestleMania was Seth Rollins. A man who knew him better than almost anyone. A man who wasn't just looking for a title. He was looking to expose Roman. Not just as a wrestler, but as a man who lost the family he once ruled. And that's exactly what happened. The match was brutal. Long, personal. The crowd was split, but everyone knew they were watching the end of something. Rollins didn't just beat Reigns, he broke him. Roman left the ring alone. No title. No family. No Heyman. The next night on Raw, the betrayal was complete. Paul Heyman walked out with Seth Rollins and declared him the next generation visionary. It wasn't just a new alliance. It was a knife in the back of the man Heyman had once called the greatest of all time. And Roman Reigns? He vanished. No tweet. No promo. No vignette. He was gone. For weeks, WWE didn't say a word. The commentary team wouldn't talk about him. His name wasn't mentioned in promos. It was like he never existed. That's when Solo Sikoa stepped up. The younger brother of the Usos. The silent assassin who had backed Roman through his final wars. He stepped into the power vacuum with one goal. To hold the bloodline together. He declared himself the new tribal chief. It wasn't a coronation. There was no ceremony. No acknowledgement. He simply took the mic one night on SmackDown and said, "The bloodline continues. Under me." The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some fans respected the move. Solo had earned his moments in the ring. He had a believable presence. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it carried weight. But something felt off. He didn't command the same fear Roman did. He didn't have the same voice, the same presence. And the fans felt it. The chants began almost immediately. OTC, Original Tribal Chief. Week after week, the crowd refused to buy into Solo's claim. They didn't see a king. They saw a placeholder. Still, WWE doubled down. They gave Solo the spotlight. They had him squash challengers, main event SmackDowns, and even bring in new backup. JC Mateo, a cocky upstart with a dangerous streak. And more importantly, Jacob Fatu. Fatu came in like a wrecking ball. His debut was explosive. His first few matches were bloodbaths. And right away, he had the aura of a star. But WWE made a choice. They presented him as Solo's muscle, not his equal. And that's where the cracks really began to show. Fatu would stand behind Solo during promos, arms crossed, silent. Mateo did the talking. Solo claimed the glory. And week after week, Fatu did the dirty work. Meanwhile, the fans kept chanting. Kept reminding everyone who they wanted back. It wasn't disrespect toward Solo. It was loyalty to the man who built the empire in the first place. By early June, backstage tension and storylines reflected the growing instability. Solo was starting to show signs of insecurity. In one segment, he shoved Fatu during a match. In another, he interrupted a Mateo promo to reassert control. It was subtle, but consistent. Then came the mic slip. On an episode of SmackDown, during a backstage segment where Solo was mic'd up for a behind-the-scenes feature, he was overheard telling JC Mateo, "Fatu's just muscle. Not a thinker." The segment cut quickly. But the internet caught it. Clips spread across social media like wildfire. It was a moment that told fans everything they needed to know. Solo didn't see Fatu as a partner. He saw him as a pawn. And in WWE, pawns eventually break the board. The betrayal at Money in the Bank wasn't a swerve. It was the boiling point. The bloodline had been rotting from within ever since Roman walked away. Solo didn't rebuild it, he patched it with tape and hoped it held. It didn't. When Jacob Fatu kicked Solo in the face and walked out at Money in the Bank, it wasn't rebellion. It was justice. He had been used, sidelined, disrespected. And the moment he broke free, the crowd didn't boo. They exploded. The fall of the bloodline didn't happen overnight. It happened moment by moment. Roman losing at WrestleMania. Heyman walking out with Rollins. Solo declaring himself leader. Fatu being treated like a bodyguard, not a bloodline prince. And finally, betrayal. When Roman Reigns walked back out on SmackDown and Jacob Fatu stood beside him, WWE didn't just deliver a twist. They closed a chapter. The old bloodline, the version built on fear, family, and control, was dead. And something new had begun. For years, Jacob Fatu has been one of the best-kept secrets in professional wrestling. Wrestling insiders knew. Hardcore fans knew. Promoters whispered his name behind closed doors with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legends. But it wasn't until 2025 that the mainstream audience truly understood what he was. And what he was a storm waiting to hit. The moment he turned on Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank, Jacob Fatu stopped being potential. He became a headline. A threat. A force with real gravity. That single moment catapulted him into the main event picture, not as a sidekick, but as a destroyer. But to understand why that betrayal hit so hard, and why his alliance with Roman Reigns is shaking WWE, you need to understand what Fatu's rise looked like from the inside. Jacob Fatu comes from the legendary Anoa'i bloodline, the same lineage that produced The Rock, Roman Reigns, the Usos, Rikishi, and countless others. Wrestling isn't in his blood, it is his blood. And yet, unlike many of his family members, Jacob didn't enter WWE through the traditional path. He honed his craft on the independent scene, carving out a legacy without the WWE machine behind him. From 2019 to 2023, Fatu dominated MLW, Major League Wrestling. His run as World Heavyweight Champion there was more than just impressive, it was historic. He didn't just beat opponents. He crushed them. His in-ring style was a contradiction, heavy but agile, methodical but explosive. He was 280 pounds of fury that moved like someone half his size. Fans who saw him live in those years remember the raw energy. The violence. The authenticity. He wasn't playing a character. He was the character. And unlike some in the industry who coast on family name, Fatu made his name mean something on its own. Still, despite the success, there were rumors WWE hesitated to sign him early on. Some cited legal issues from his past. Others said the company simply didn't know what to do with a guy who looked like a monster but moved like a highlight reel. But in 2024, that changed. The company brought him in through NXT for a brief stint, 3 matches, all decisive wins, and then fast-tracked him to SmackDown. That's when things got interesting. His debut was quiet by bloodline standards. No fireworks. No speeches. He appeared at the side of Solo Sikoa one night and took out LA Knight in under 2 minutes. Fans noticed. The commentators called him a weapon in the new Tribal Chief's arsenal. The message was clear, Fatu was the muscle. The enforcer. The quiet giant behind the self-declared leader. But the presentation never quite fit. Jacob Fatu is not a background player. And fans knew it. Even in his early SmackDown appearances, he had presence. You couldn't ignore him. He moved differently. He sold differently. He stared into the camera with a look that made people lean forward. In 6-man tags, fans watched him more than Solo. In backstage segments, the camera couldn't help but linger on him for a second longer than intended. He didn't have to say much. He didn't have to do much. He simply was. And WWE, to their credit, began to let it simmer. Over the next 2 months, Fatu began to wrestle more singles matches. Against Ricochet. Against Butch. Against Santos Escobar. And each time, he made them look like cannon fodder. No wasted motion. No unnecessary taunts. Just punishment. The fans responded. Each week, the cheers grew louder. At first, they were for the brutality. Then, for the defiance. Fatu wasn't obeying Solo's every order anymore. He didn't always tag in when told. Sometimes, he ended matches early. Other times, he ignored signals completely. It wasn't chaotic. It was calculated. He was showing the world that he wasn't a follower. He was waiting. Then came the mic moment. That night on SmackDown, Solo was venting to JC Mateo. The camera wasn't supposed to pick it up. But fans heard it loud and clear. Fatu's just muscle. Not a thinker. That one line pulled back the curtain. It confirmed what many suspected: Solo never saw Fatu as an equal. He saw him as a tool. Something to use. Something beneath him. And right there, the clock started ticking. From that moment on, Fatu's demeanor changed. He was no longer standing silently in the background. He was standing still. Watching. Processing. Waiting for the right moment. He didn't speak out. He didn't attack. He didn't play his hand. He let Solo believe he was still in control. Then came Money in the Bank. The turn wasn't rushed. It wasn't overacted. It was clinical. Controlled. And it said more than a dozen promos could have. Fatu didn't need to monologue. He just said 3 words: "I hate you." And then destroyed the man he'd been protecting. But it wasn't hate, really. It was a declaration of worth. Fatu wasn't muscle. He was the future. And when he walked out beside Roman Reigns on SmackDown just days later, it all snapped into focus. Roman had been gone for months. Fans wondered how he'd come back. Would he bring the Usos? Would he come back alone? Would he even want the Bloodline anymore? The answer was clear: Reigns didn't come back to rebuild the past. He came back to upgrade it. Jacob Fatu wasn't a tag-along. He was the new anchor. And that's what makes this story dangerous. Because Roman Reigns, for all his dominance, has never had someone like Fatu at his side before. Not someone this fresh. This violent. This respected. Jacob Fatu didn't get here by accident. He earned it. Every bloodied opponent. Every silent stare. Every match where he could have said something, but didn't. He let his moment come to him. And now? Now he's in the main event picture, aligned with the most dangerous man in WWE history, and holding the keys to the next chapter of the Bloodline. And he didn't have to talk his way into it. He fought his way in. Sometimes the most dangerous thing in wrestling isn't a steel chair or a sneak attack, it's a microphone that stays on just a second too long. That's exactly what happened on a quiet Friday night episode of SmackDown, 3 weeks before Money in the Bank. No one expected it to matter. But in hindsight, that moment was the first domino in the downfall of Solo Sikoa's version of the Bloodline. The segment was standard WWE fare. Solo Sikoa and JC Mateo were backstage after a match. They'd just won a tag bout, and the camera followed them as they walked through the hallway, tension high. Sweat dripping, breathing heavy. Nothing out of the ordinary. The scene looked like it was wrapping. The camera started to pan away. Then it caught something. A brief mutter. Barely audible at first, but clear enough once fans rewound the clip and isolated the audio. Solo said it while pointing down the hall toward the locker room, where Jacob Fatu had gone. Fatu's just muscle. Not a thinker. Mateo chuckled. Shrugged. The two kept walking. Cut to commercial. It didn't even register with most of the audience live. But within minutes, the clip was all over Twitter. Fans were subtitling it, replaying it, analyzing every word, every pause. What was meant to be an offhand comment turned into a storyline rupture. And more importantly, Jacob Fatu heard it too. That night, Fatu didn't come out for the post-match segment with the rest of the Bloodline. Commentary chalked it up to fatigue. But online? Fans were already speculating. Was this the start of something? Was WWE teasing a turn? The answer turned out to be yes. But not immediately. WWE let it simmer. The next week, Solo cut a promo about leading the Bloodline into a new generation of dominance. Mateo stood beside him, cocky as ever. Fatu stood behind them, but this time, something had changed. He didn't cross his arms. He didn't nod. He didn't even move. He just stood there. Unblinking. And in wrestling, sometimes stillness says more than motion ever could. The camera lingered on Fatu for a beat longer than usual. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. A signal to the fans, pay attention. This isn't over. The week after that, another clue. During a 6-man tag match, Solo tagged himself in while Fatu was setting up for a finishing move. Fatu didn't argue. But he didn't clap when the match ended either. He exited the ring before the celebration started. Commentary noticed. Fans noticed. Reddit threads blew up. By now, the quote had gone viral. Fatu's just muscle. Not a thinker. It wasn't just an insult. It was a miscalculation. Jacob Fatu had kept quiet for months. He had played the role. He had crushed whoever they put in front of him. He had stood behind Solo in press photos. He had done what was asked. But deep down, you could feel it. This was a man who knew he was being underestimated. And Solo? He never saw it coming. He kept talking. Kept calling himself the tribal chief. Kept talking about loyalty, about family, about order. But every time Fatu was on screen, you could see the distance growing. He stopped looking at Solo during promos. He stopped reacting to Mateo's trash talk. And when fans started chanting Fatu during matches, he didn't shut it down. He let it happen. He let the momentum shift. Then came the last straw. On a SmackDown 1 week before Money in the Bank, the Bloodline came out to confront LA Knight. Solo barked into the mic. Mateo backed him up. Fatu stood in the background, silent as usual. Knight, never one to waste an opportunity, pointed straight at Fatu and said, "You don't even want to be here, do you? You're just waiting. Waiting for your moment. Because you and I both know Solo's got the ego, and you've got the power." The crowd roared. Solo snapped and attacked Knight, derailing the segment. But the message had landed. The quote was now alive inside WWE storylines. The mic slip that was once seen as a production flub had become part of the canon. And that's what made the eventual turn so devastating. Because when Jacob Fatu climbed that ladder at Money in the Bank, yanked Solo down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I hate you," we believed it. Because it had been building. Because we heard the disrespect. Because Fatu had said nothing, until it was time to say everything. Solo's mic slip wasn't just a turning point in the story, it was the perfect encapsulation of his fatal flaw. He saw himself as a ruler. He saw Mateo as his voice. And he saw Fatu as muscle. He never realized the man he was belittling was the one capable of taking everything from him. And now? That same man is standing next to Roman Reigns. There are moments in wrestling that fans don't just watch, they live. Roman Reigns' return with Jacob Fatu at SmackDown, following Fatu's betrayal of Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank, was one of those moments. It didn't just trend. It didn't just pop ratings. It invaded the bloodstream of every wrestling fan with a pulse. And when something that big hits, the first and loudest voices to respond are always the fans. And they didn't disappoint. Immediately after Fatu's heel turn at Money in the Bank, Twitter/X turned into a warzone. Clips of the betrayal were circulating within seconds. The superkick. The moonsault. The stare. Fans rewound and rewatched it frame by frame. Hashtags like #Fatu turns, #Bloodline collapse, and #Roman returns started trending globally. One fan, user at WrestleAddict7, tweeted, "Jacob Fatu just gave us the most savage turn since Seth cracked Roman with the chair." This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a revolt. That tweet hit over 75,000 likes in under 24 hours. Another viral reaction came from a live fan recording at T-Mobile Arena, capturing the exact moment of the betrayal. The crowd in the clip didn't just react, they erupted. You could hear the disbelief in real time. One voice in the background screamed, "No way." He did not just, followed by stunned silence and then an explosion of cheers and boos. That duality, the crowd not knowing whether to celebrate or mourn, was everything. On Reddit, the conversation exploded into multiple threads. The r/WWE subreddit pinned a post titled "Jacob Fatu just set fire to the bloodline, let's talk," and within 2 hours, it had over 2,000 comments. One of the most upvoted replies read, "I've been watching wrestling for over 20 years. That was the moment. Not just because it shocked me, but because it made total sense. WWE built to this. They earned it." Another fan posted a side-by-side comparison of the Fatu turn with Seth Rollins' chair shot in 2014. It sparked a heated debate about which betrayal was more iconic. Opinions split, but the fact that Fatu was even being compared to that moment spoke volumes about how instantly massive it became. TikTok lit up too. Dozens of creators posted reaction videos. Some filmed their live responses, mouths dropping, screaming at their screens. Others broke it down with commentary and predictions. One creator, known for his fantasy booking series, posted a video titled "The Bloodline Civil War has officially begun," and gained over 2 million views in 48 hours. What made the moment special wasn't just that it was shocking, it was earned. Fans love twists, but they love payoff even more. And Jacob Fatu's betrayal felt like the reward for months of watching closely. More than anything, though, the betrayal sparked emotion. For some, it was heartbreak. Instagram user at Samoan Empire posted a tribute image of Solo and Fatu from earlier in the year, captioned, "They built something brutal together. But in the end, ego killed it." Solo never saw the threat coming from his own house. Other fans took a different tone, celebrating the turn as the beginning of a new era. YouTube comments on WWE's official upload of the SmackDown return were flooded with fire emojis, goat emojis, and comments like, "This is the most hyped I've been for WWE in years. This is cinema. Jacob Fatu just became the baddest man in the company. Period. Roman and Fatu standing together gave me chills. That's what real power looks like." Fan-made posters began circulating almost instantly. Edits showing Roman and Fatu as kings. Mock SummerSlam graphics featuring the new Bloodline versus Rollins and Breakker. Speculative artwork imagining Reigns, Fatu, and maybe even Jey Uso reuniting as a new, deadlier unit. But not all reactions were celebratory. Some fans expressed concern for Solo Sikoa, not just as a character, but as an emerging top star. Many believed he had carried the bloodline narrative during Roman's absence and felt the betrayal might bury him. Others saw it as the catalyst he needed to evolve. One thread on a wrestling forum asked bluntly, "Is this the end of Solo, or his beginning?" The responses varied. "He got exposed, yeah. But that's the point. Now we get to see if Solo can rise without the crutch of legacy. He was never the chief. He was the interim. And the interim just got replaced." I hope this means Solo finally becomes the monster he pretended to be. Let him go dark. Let him go full Samoan psycho. Another prevailing fan sentiment? WWE stuck the landing. In a company often criticized for swerves without follow-through, this arc, from Roman's absence, to Fatu's introduction, to the quiet tension, to the mic slip, to the turn, was storytelling done right. Fans weren't confused. They were invested. Because they'd been watching the chess game. They'd been reading the body language. They'd heard the hot mic. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know when or how it would drop. And when it dropped, the internet caught fire. The passion, the engagement, the theories, it all points to one simple truth: WWE didn't just create a moment. They sparked a movement. Now fans are hungry. They want answers. They want face-offs. They want Fatu versus Solo. They want Reigns versus Rollins. They want new chapters, new betrayals, new wars. And most importantly, they want more. Because when wrestling hits like this, it's not just a show. It's a revolution. While all eyes were locked on the implosion of the Bloodline, there was one man who saw it coming before anyone else. One man who didn't just watch it happen, he planned around it. Seth Rollins. The architect. The man who once destroyed the Shield from the inside and is now poised to do the same to WWE's next great dynasty. Since Roman Reigns disappeared after WrestleMania 41, Seth Rollins hasn't just been surviving, he's been thriving. Quietly. Confidently. Strategically. And while others were scrambling to fill the power vacuum left behind by Roman's exit, Rollins was building his next move. Let's rewind to the night after WrestleMania. Roman Reigns had just lost everything: his title, his aura, his family. The bloodline was fractured. Heyman was silent. SmackDown ended with a slow shot of Reigns walking alone through the backstage corridor, no music, no words. Just defeat. Then came Raw. Seth Rollins walked out and stood next to Paul Heyman. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Heyman did the talking, calling Rollins the inevitable, the visionary future of WWE, and, most importantly, the man who finally ended the Reigns era. It wasn't just a promo. It was a coup. Heyman had turned. The man who once called Roman Reigns "my tribal chief" was now aligning himself with the one person who had done what no one else could: beat Roman on the grandest stage of them all. That was the start of a calculated takeover. Rollins wasn't interested in declaring himself the new tribal chief. That wasn't his style. Instead, he took a different route. He formed his own faction, not one based on blood, but on dominance. Enter Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. Two monsters. Two wrecking balls. Two men hungry for opportunity. Rollins gave them that opportunity. Not as followers, but as weapons. Together, they began to dismantle the WWE main event scene. While Solo Sikoa was trying to rebrand the Bloodline, Rollins was doing what he always does: build smarter, faster, stronger. He didn't need chance. He didn't need family ties. He needed control. And that control crystallized at Money in the Bank. Rollins didn't win that briefcase by accident. He didn't slide in at the last second by luck. He won it because he knew the Bloodline was cracking. He saw the weakness in Solo's eyes. He saw the hesitation in Fatu's body language. He watched the hot mic moment like the rest of us, but unlike us, he did something about it. He prepared. Rollins didn't need to destroy the Bloodline himself. He just needed to be ready when they self-destructed. And when Fatu dropped Solo through a ladder and left him broken in the ring, Rollins was already halfway up the steel. The briefcase wasn't a prize. It was confirmation. Seth Rollins is once again holding all the cards. Now, with the Bloodline in shambles and Roman Reigns returning with vengeance in his eyes, Seth finds himself in a familiar spot, face to face with the man who used to call him a brother. This isn't just a title rivalry. It's personal. Their history runs deep. The Shield. The betrayal. The clashes over the years. And now, the betrayal reversed, Heyman switching sides, aligning with the former understudy while the tribal chief was left behind. Seth has always lived in Roman's shadow. Not anymore. He's the man with the briefcase. He's the one with momentum. He's the one with a faction that doesn't splinter. And if anyone thinks Roman is just going to walk back into the company and pick up where he left off, Seth Rollins is ready to remind them how things really work in this era. One of the most telling signs of Rollins' growth over the last year has been his transformation into a hybrid. He's no longer just a high-flying technician. He's no longer just a flashy talker. He's become a general. He controls tempo. He bends narratives. He doesn't follow storylines, he hijacks them. He did it to Cody Rhodes. He did it to Drew McIntyre. And now, he's doing it to the Bloodline. Let's be clear, Seth didn't turn the crowd against Solo Sikoa. He let Solo do that himself. He didn't sabotage Jacob Fatu's loyalty. He let Solo's own words do the work. That's the genius of the architect. He sees what's coming before the rest of the roster even hears the first crack. So where does this put Rollins now? Right in Roman Reigns' crosshairs. And he loves it. Because deep down, Seth Rollins has always thrived in these moments. The chaos. The hatred. The attention. He's not intimidated by Roman's legacy. He's been a part of it. He helped build it. And he's ready to burn it down. Now, the chessboard is set. Roman Reigns has returned, flanked by a man more dangerous than any ally he's ever had. Jacob Fatu isn't an ooso. He's not a follower. He's a predator. And if Roman's coming for revenge, he's not coming to talk. He's coming to take everything back. Seth Rollins isn't backing down. In fact, he might welcome it. Because for all Roman's dominance, for all his accolades, there's still one thing Rollins has over him: he was the first to betray. And he's never looked back.